Hello everyone and welcome to your Illustrator Creative Challenge. I'm Andrew Hochradel and today I'm going to be showing you how to use effects and textures over in Adobe Illustrator. So if you want to be a part of this challenge, you can grab the source file down in the description. It looks just like this. So I'm going to show you a really quick trick to make your typography, your art look like it has been hand printed, right? A little vintage book kind of vibe. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a nice block behind this text. We're going to make it maybe a little burnt orange. Ooh, yeah. And then I'm actually going to put this stroke of the same color that I have here on this box. And I just want you to see what this looks like as an effect. So what we're going to do is we are going to come over here and we are going to grab our text. And we can use this effect on live text. We're going to go to Effect. Then we are going to go down to Distort and Transform, and then we are going to go to Roughen. So the key with Roughen is that we want very small roughens. We want it to be smooth so that it feels like the ink is kind of bleeding out a little bit. And then we're actually going to take the size all the way down to maybe 1%. And even less than that, maybe we'll go to 0.8%. And then from there, we can increase the amount of detail, right? So we can do a little bit of detail, a lot of bit of detail. But if we take this to maybe 15, and maybe we'll take this down to 0.5, you can see there very quickly and very easily, we have a printed effect on our type. And what's cool is if I wanted to, I could select my object that is outside, right, that our little border, and I could apply that roughen as well. It's going to look a little bit different, but if we wanted it to look the same, what we can do is come over here to our appearance panel. Now, if you've never used the appearance panel, it is very, very powerful, and we can select our subject, click on roughen, and check this out. We can actually change the settings right here. So I can take this down to 0.2 if I wanted to, right? So it's very, very subtle. And maybe this we want to just be 5. And that's the amount of detail, the amount of squiggles is dictated by this second number, right? So maybe I just want that to be 1. It's going to give me some weird edges. All right, sure. So we can hit OK. And you can see there that now it is this kind of hand-done effect that I think is really nice. So quick effect. And the cool thing is, yes, it is still true type, and you can type whatever you want, like if you want to say hi to chat. And it will save that, which is really cool. You also could save this as a graphic style. As we're looking at these effects, any effects that you put on things can get saved as graphic styles. You can click right here, select it, and then come over to your graphic styles and just hit the plus button. So all I need to do is hit the plus button right here, and it is going to save that as a graphic style. If I come over to this type right here, it should, yes, apply that texture to it, right? And so the graphic style was only the effect. It actually wasn't any of the colors because I didn't save it that way. But with this effect, I can literally come in here and just click, and anything that I click on and apply that graphic style to will change to our texture. Pretty cool. So I'm going to show you some different ways to play around with texture and effects. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create some texture. And I'm actually going to turn off the roughen here. Right here, I can go in, grab that effect and turn it off. And we're going to add texture to this in a couple ways. So the first way that we can add texture that is very, very easy is just to multiply things. So we can come over to Adobe Stock. So we're going to use stock.adobe.com/free. That's right, /free. So if you click on stock.adobe.com/free, that is going to get you to the free part of Adobe Stock. So from here, I'm just going to type in rough texture, and that is going to give me a bunch of rough textures. So it is not important to me that you use a vector here. We can use pretty much anything, and I'm actually going to use this first one because I think it looks pretty good. So we're going to click on license. It is going to license that and save it into our library. This is a vector. We're not going to use a vector. We're just going to use the JPEG to show you that you can take a picture of concrete. Anything that is around you that has texture, you can capture and just bring into Adobe Illustrator. So we're going to bring that into Illustrator. I'm going to go into my downloads real quick, and we are going to toss that into Illustrator. And you can see now we have this texture over this shape. Now, there's a couple different ways that I could do this. The first way is we could come up here and we could use image trace. So you can use image trace and maybe do black and white logo, and it will grab a lot of these pieces. So let's see what happens here. Great. So black and white logo. Now we have some vector pieces. You can do that. If you're printing, screen printing, you probably want to do that. We'll click on expand and then you can delete the white. So what I have, which I'm going to let you use right now, you can actually just screenshot this. So what I'm going to do is I've made a preset that I like to call halftone. Yes, I know it's spelled wrong. I made it like years ago and I've never changed it. So the halftone that I have, I'm going to pull up the settings so that you can see, and I'll kind of walk you through what they are. But it's going to grab a really, really good kind of sample of a black and white texture. So here are my settings. If you want to copy these, threshold 128, paths 98, corners 0, noise 2, creates fills, snap curves to lines, and ignore white. So those are my settings for that. And I can click expand. And now we have all of this crazy cool texture that we can play around with. What I like to do is I'll grab the lasso tool, which is Q, and I'll just go around all the area that I don't want the texture, right? All the area that I don't really need. And I want it to be close to the letters. So I'm just going to grab all this area that I don't need. And what's cool is even if I get some weird edge, I can hit delete and then hit delete again, and it's going to take out all of those pieces. I selected the text there as well. That was a problem. Let's see here. Let's unselect the text. There we go. All right, so now I've got some really cool texture here, and this is a great way to do vector texture. Maybe we want to do some yellow here, and then we can play around with multiplying it so we can get some kind of cool texture going on. So this is not my preferred way. If I need something to be vector, I will do that. There also is another way. We're going to be using a lot of image trace today, by the way. So another way that you can do this is you can just grab in your texture here. And what we're going to do this time is we're actually just going to make 2 copies of it, right? We're going to get this texture and we are going to make some copies. So it's pretty good. And I'm going to group these 2 together. So we have 2 black and white textures, and I'm going to group them together. And then if I go into outline mode, which is Control Y, you'll see that I have the text underneath here. So I can click and drag to get the 2 grouped textures on top and my text on the bottom. Then I'm going to go to my opacity or transparency panel. I can click on make mask, and here's what's going to happen. Boom. So everything that was white on these images showed through. Right? So those textures, everything that was white showed through, everything that was black gets knocked out. So in this panel, I can either move the text, which is right here, that moves everything, or I can move these textures around if I wanted to. And you can see there, as I move the textures around, you can find the perfect area of texture for you. Right? We could even add in, and if we wanted to, we could double click and we could just make a copy of this and add another texture on top. So the cool thing about using an opacity mask is that when I come back here, let's say that I don't want to do texture. Maybe I want to say hoppy. I don't know why people are saying hoppy. Oh, Hoppy Friday. Got it. As I type that in, you'll see that it's actually going to very quickly and very easily keep that texture going. So because it is a mask, the more that I type with the texture, it will keep going until we run out of space, and then it should just cut off. Yep. So you can see how it just cuts off here. That's because the textures that we're using don't keep going, right? So if I wanted to, I could use my direct selection tool, and I'm just going to hold Alt or Option and make a copy. And there we go. Now we can extend for more, right? And that's going to keep everything together and keep those kind of looking really, really good. So I do want to say, let's say hi chat. I think that that's the zone that we're going to be in. Actually, let's just say hello. I don't like hello. Let's say greetings. All right, greetings is good. So what you can do here is we can actually use these textures to create a vector texture. So we're going to do a combination of the 2 things that I just showed you. We are going to use the opacity mask, right, to make a nice texture on this live text. We're going to make the text black. And then we are going to use our roughen. So we're going to go to effect, and we are going to go to distort and transform, roughen, and again, the settings that we used last time, I always do smooth, and I think we went 0.8, and then we did 15 here, right? And that's going to give us a nice kind of printed edge. I'm going to do 0.5, a little bit too much for me, and I'll hit OK. So now you can see we've got some really cool texture on this type. It's looking good. It's looking fun. And what we can do to add even another layer is go to Object, Rasterize. you will almost never use this tool in Illustrator unless you are doing texturing. So I'm going to rasterize, and this is basically going to make it pixels, right? So we're gonna hit OK. And now it's made it into just, there's no editable, there's no changes. It is just plain pixels. And that's great because now we have the option to image trace it. So I'm going to use my halftone pattern again. The halftone, again, I showed you the settings a little bit earlier. You can put those in, and you can see here that now it's taken those values and really crunched them down and knocked them out to give us this really cool kind of crunchy typography look. Now, if I wanted to, I could come in here and increase the threshold, and these are my settings if you want to steal them. If I increase the threshold, it's actually going to make it darker. If I take the threshold down, it will make it lighter. So it'll add more texture if I take it down, less texture if I take it up. So a really, really great way to get that printed material look on your type, even if you just want a little bit of extra texture. Cool. All right, it's looking pretty good. I'm not mad about it at all. We've got some nice text there. Let's go ahead and show you a couple different effects that you can play around with as well. So that effect that we showed you that was the Roughen, that was an effect that was vector. It's a vector effect, and it will keep going indefinitely. So I want to show you some effects that are not vector. And the reason that they're not vector is because they do things that vector can't. And we're going to play around with these other filters and these other effects and see what we can create. And then to make it vector, we're going to use that same workflow. We're going to go to Object, Rasterize, rasterize it, and then we'll use our auto trace or the vectorize to pull it back into vector and give us some nice, awesome texture. So we can go up here and go to Effect, and at the top, these are all of our vector effects. These are great, these are helpful, these look awesome, but I'm going to play around with the Photoshop effects. And the Photoshop effects are all raster, which means we can get some really, really cool effects, but it's going to be something that we'll need to auto trace back down to make it vector. So the first one that I'm going to put on here is I'm going to do a blur. And I want to show you what happens. This is one of my favorite ways to get a soft edge is I'll find a font like that has very, very kind of chunky letters. So I can filter here. I'm going to do a sans serif with chunky letters. And let's say that I want, actually, let's use a Franklin. I know that Franklin is one that I use very often. I guess let's not. All right, so let's use this one. So we're gonna say hi, chat. And what I like to do is, this is kind of an effect I've been using for a while, is I go to Effect, and then I'm going to blur, do a Gaussian blur, and it will blur it out. And then what happens is if we go in and we rasterize this, and then again, use that image trace. You could probably just do black and white logo if you wanted. What it's going to do is it's going to round out all those edges. So this is a great way to get kind of that blown out look on typography. And even if you just want like a bubbly look, blur it and slam down and auto trace. Very, very, very helpful. So we can also stack effects if we wanted to. We can come over to the appearance panel, which I'm just going to pull over here, and I can click on effects and I can start stacking effects. So for this one, we're going to do pixelate, and I'm going to do a color halftone. And these settings, pretty much whatever's in there, you'll be fine. Just leave it. We'll hit OK, and it's going to give me this really tight kind of color halftone. That actually is a little bit too tight for me. So we're going to go to color halftone, and the max radius I'm going to set at 20. We're gonna hit OK, and that will give us just a bigger, that looks a little bit better. So we've got a little bit of that texture going on. And now let's keep stacking effects. So we can come here and maybe we want to do brush strokes, and we want to do a crosshatch. So I can click on crosshatch, and it is going to add that effect, right? So I can come in here and I can kind of see what's happening. Maybe I don't want the crosshatch. Ooh, I like the splatter. That's kind of cool. And so you can experiment with these different pieces and just play around with what you find, right? So it's already creating this very like gritty texture for me, which is awesome. I'm going to add in one more. And again, we can stack these. So if the color halftone is above the splatter, it's going to affect the color halftone will be affected by the splatter. If we do it the opposite way, I think that it's going to flip it. Yes. So you won't be able to see the splatter. So it's basically working in layers. So if an effect isn't working the way that you want it to, you can just change the order of your layers. So we're going to add one more in here. We are going to go to blur. We are going to go to Gaussian blur, and we are going to blur this whole thing out. And we're just going to blur it maybe by 5 pixels. And that'll give us some cool texture. Ooh, yeah, cool. All right, so this is giving us some cool texture. This is giving us a nice little blur on those edges. And let's go ahead and do our trick where we go to Object, rasterize. We're going to hit OK. And then we are going to do that shades of gray or just a black and white logo if we want the crushed down version. So you'll see that we missed everything. We lost all of that detail and texture, and that's because the threshold is too high. So all we need to do is bring that threshold down. And as we bring it down, you'll see that we're starting to pick up, yeah, a lot of that type. Cool. All right, so this looks pretty good to me, and we can hit expand, and now we're back into vectors. So now we can't make any changes, but we have gotten back to vectors and created this really cool kind of crunchy type. I love it. It's great. So with all of this, I do want to show you how you can apply this to like an illustration. So we'll come back and we'll go here, and I'm just going to do maybe a book illustration. So we're going to click on vectors. And let's go ahead and find one that looks like it is like new and modern, right? So maybe this is great. I love these. So we're gonna hit license here, and I want these to go and look like they are in a maybe children's book, like an old children's book. So we're gonna use our effect of Roughen on this whole thing. Yes, it's very, very easy to be able to change using Roughen. So what we can do is we can select all of this. And there are a couple pieces that we might not want to have, right? So this texture that's in here, I'm just going to delete that because as we roughen those, it's just going to get crazy. And I don't really want that extra texture on there. So I'm going to go ahead and delete those. Zoom in here, see if there's anything else. All right, so I think we're good. And all I need to do now is I'm going to select everything, just hitting Control A. And then I'm going to unselect the background. So we just have the illustrations here. And now I can apply that effect. So I'm going to zoom in so I can see really close. And we're going to go to Effect, again, Distort and Transform, and Roughen. And from here, we're going to put in some settings, 0.5. We're going to do smooth. Maybe we want 15. And let's hit OK and see what happened. So now, when we look at these, you can see that they've got this kind of printed edge. And maybe the 15 was a bit too much on that. So I'm actually going to undo that. And we'll go ahead and change those settings right here in the Appearance panel. So let's go ahead and take this down to 5. Because I don't want it to be that much. And then maybe let's take this down to 0.3. So hit OK. There we go. And now we've got this kind of illustrated rough edge that I love happening on the hair, on the edges. And you can see that it just gave the illustrations a new look. Now, I do want to show you one more thing that we can do to use effects. And that is a new effect that is not here, but it is in conjunction with Adobe Firefly. So we're going to hit save, and I'm just going to save this onto my downloads. Excuse me, as an SVG. So it's very important this needs to be an SVG. And I'm going to type out people. And we are going to use artboards, and I'm going to do the range of 1, which is the entire first artboard. We'll hit save here, and now we're going to save this file. And there is a great tool that you can use in Firefly Beta. You can go to firefly.adobe.com, get more information about it, but it is called the Generative Recolor. So we're going to upload an SVG. And of course, we're going to grab the one that we just did, people. We'll hit open, and we're going to describe the color palette that I want. So the color palette that I want, it is Pride this month. And so let's go ahead and do maybe a rainbow bright color scheme. So you can type in anything that you want, anything that has an emotion or a feeling or a vibe, and it will generate a color palette with that. So we're going to hit generate, and it is going to take the SVG that we have in that vector and reimagine it into the prompt that we have given. So we had rainbow bright, and it is pulling in some more rainbow colors, right? So what I can do is I can actually use some of these and see what that looks like as well. So we have trippy disco, we have summer by the sea. Ooh, I like that. Maybe let's do bright field, maybe floral field. And this, I'm thinking, is going to give us some greens, some bright colors for some flowers. Let's see what happens. Yeah. So I love these pastels that are happening here. And if I wanted to, it's going to give me those prominent colors. And I can even hit this right here, and it will shuffle the colors so I can see what it looks like as those colors kind of move around. So I can see maybe if we're fluctuating skin tones, want to make sure that we have all of that covered. I think this is looking pretty cool. Ooh, I like that one. All right, so we can shuffle through, have some cool stuff, but what's even better is we can come in here and we can download it. So you can download and then it will be an SVG. You also can check out those prominent colors. If we click on it, it will show us it larger so we can understand the tool a little bit better. But now I can come in here, I can go back to my downloads and we can go to Firefly Full Field Vector Art. We're going to hit open with and go to Adobe Illustrator and check it out. We have our file right back here and it is fully vector. Now, something that did happen is when you save as an SVG, and the difference between these two is when you're in Illustrator, this effect that we have applied is applied to those shapes. Once you save as an SVG, it's going to crush everything down. So now it is no longer an effect. Those are just the shapes. It has outlined all those effects so that they are simple shapes now and not anything more. So got a pretty cool effect there. And again, if I wanted to change the settings on any of this, what I can do is I can actually select this and then we can go to edit, edit colors, and recolor artwork. And this is going to be a really, really helpful way to get more colors that I want in there, right? So maybe this purple background is not as much what I want. I can grab this and kind of pull it down so that there's less of it. And you can see that it's starting to fill in some of the other colors, right? I want a little more of that, maybe a little less of this pink, maybe a little bit more of this pink. Right? And so as we pull this around, it will adjust our colors. We also can go down here and see the brightness and the hue, as well as the saturation and color. So I can do the saturation and maybe I want it more saturated, kind of pump it up. That's looking a little bit too much. Maybe I want a little more pastel. I can pull it down. That looks pretty good to me. And so what's cool is it not only has given me that new color palette, it has actually changed the color of these. So it's not an effect that's sitting on top, it's changing the color. And I can select all of this, come over to my color panel, hit the folder, and boom. Now I have all those colors in my file for me to use in other places, right? Pretty cool. All right, so let's continue, and I'm going to show you one more thing, and then I'm going to show you where you can engage with us, where you can post your work. So we can change this type here and start stacking some other effects on top of it. And again, what we're going to do is we're going to come to the appearance panel right here. We're going to go to FX, which is just the effects, and we are going to do a new distort and transform, and from here, I'm going to use free distort. So we're going to click on free distort, and what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to kind of grab these edges and distort however I want to, right? There are different ways to do this in Illustrator, but doing a free distort is going to allow it to stay typable, right? We could do this in a couple different ways, but if you're trying to get like that like flying look, this is actually a really, really great way that's really easy to get that look. So I can select all of this and then I can go to effects, I can do distort and transform, and I can do free distort. And as I grab these, let's see if it does it. I can grab these to just put it at an angle. There we go. We'll hit OK. And you'll see that it now has augmented all of that. We could do that a bunch of different ways, but you can stack as many effects as you want to. Something else we could do is warps. I love doing warps on things. Warps are just super fun. Let's do a flag on this rise. There we go. So we'll hit OK. So what we see here is that it is treating each of these differently. Each of these now has an effect applied to it. What I think will change is if I group it and then I apply that same effect that we did, that is going to be what I wanted to see. There we go. So if you group it, it will apply it all together. If it is not grouped, it will move them individually. So now I have a nice little hi chat. And if I want to change the effect, I can come back and just maybe 20% is enough for us. So now we've got a little boop. There we go. So someone from our chat, our live chat, is saying hi from New York City. I love these tutorials. Yesterday, I learned how to use the puppet wrap tool with Paul Tranny. Yes. And if you want more of these, you can actually go to behance.net/challenge/ whatever program you want to learn. We have them for Photoshop. We have them for video. We have them for Illustrator. And we also have them for Adobe Express, which is kind of cool. So you can go to behance.net/challenge/ whatever you want to learn. And we have these every single morning for you to level up your skills. So thanks so much for joining me today. It was a great time. Hopefully you learned something about textures and effects. And I will see you again next week for a very special Pride Week. Yay, happy Pride, everyone. Go celebrate, and I'll see you another time. Bye.